Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. Today on the show, key takeaways for the Timberwolves win over the Memphis Grizzlies on Friday, a peek at Bleacher Report's prediction for the Wolves' end-of-season win total. I'll give you what I said on the Minnesota basketball party last week in case you missed that, along with some commentary from BR, and then also a preview of Wolves-Pelicans on Monday night. The Wolves get a third run at the New Orleans Pelicans. We'll try and go 3-0 against one of the Western Conference rivals. It's all upcoming. Welcome in. You are Locked On Wolves.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Ben Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use the code, all lowercase, LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Happy Monday, everybody. And happy Timberwolves game day. The Wolves take on New Orleans this evening. Hopefully had a fantastic weekend. We'll preview that Pels matchup here at the end of the show. New Orleans is, in general, playing a lot better here recently, so we'll kind of peek in on them, talk about what happened the last couple of times the Wolves took on New Orleans. And, you know, the rest of the show here today, I want to talk a couple of key takeaways from Friday against Memphis, and then also some, I guess, sitting here now a quarter of the way through the season, what's the win total look like? Like, what Bleacher Report is projecting out the Wolves' final win total to be. I'll give my thoughts on their thoughts, and also, I guess, what I said on the basketball party show last Wednesday, in case you missed that. So, packed show today. A big thank you, of course, for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every single day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere, including YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. Of course, you can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. You can also follow on Twitter, or I guess X, at Locked On T-Wolves, and also at Beecken with two B's, two E's, C-K-E-N. All right, so Wolves-Grizzlies on Friday. Hopefully you checked out the postcast, which I actually did solo Friday Night Live over on the Locked On Sports Minnesota YouTube channel. So I did kind of a full immediate reaction that was a little bit shorter than a regular show, but it was all like I got pretty in depth on everything I was thinking about right after the show. So this isn't a full post game pod, because if you listen to that, I don't want to just repeat what I said Friday, but I do want to, I guess, reiterate a couple of the key takeaways that I left, that I left that game with on Friday. And that's how I want to start the show here today. So let's go there first. Number one, I mean, you look at this game from Friday, and I know if you look at the final box score, and if you didn't watch the game, you look at it and it's like, okay, well, you know, Memphis still managed to score over 100 points. They still shot 43% for the field. First of all, those are good numbers. Like, if you hold a team to, like, again, this is a generalization, but if you hold a team to 103 on 43% shooting in today's NBA, that's a pretty good defensive performance. We're just so, at this point, already spoiled for how good the Wolves defense has been this season, you know, throughout this 17-4 start to the year. But if you take out garbage time, the Wolves defense was really dominant, and Rudy Gobert was reasons A, B, and C for that, right? Obviously, no Jaden McDaniels. I should say Nickeil Alexander-Walker was really good on Desmond Bane on Friday too. So credit there. But especially early, the Wolves' perimeter defense was a little bit shoddy. They gave up 31 points in the first quarter to Memphis. But as the game wore on, the perimeter defense got better, and Rudy just kept controlling the paint. And I'm running out of ways to really describe how dominant I feel he's been. But like, it was yet another game where the other team was just completely avoiding getting too close to the basket. They'd get within 10, 12 feet, and it was like to just veer away as soon as they saw Rudy. Again, multiple possessions where Rudy was contesting the perimeter or stunting on the perimeter, recovering, and then either a missed shot from somewhere else, you know, offensive rebound for the opposition, and Rudy ends up contesting at the rim again or getting a block, or he's contesting on the other side of the paint as the ball swings. Like, his mobility for his size and, frankly, age is incredible. And this is exactly how and why he won 2 Defensive Player of the Year awards a few years ago. It's just incredible. And the Wolves defense ended up having a really strong night. And this is still no Jaden McDaniels, no Anthony Edwards outside of the first 3 minutes of this game. So missing 2 of their top 3 perimeter defenders, and the Wolves still managed to turn in a really strong defensive performance. And Rudy, is like I said, the biggest reason for that by far. But Nickeil Alexander-Walker was very good too. So that was one of the things I came out of that game with. On the other side of the ball, the Timberwolves offense actually had a really strong flow in this game, and they scored 127 points. They shot 50% from the field. They were basically 40% from three. They attempted 26 free throws. Turnovers was still a little bit high. They had 13 turnovers in this game. But like, this was crisp ball movement, executing actions exactly how it appears as though they were drawn up. Secondary reactions. I spent some time on Friday on the postcast talking about that possession where the Wolves were in a horn set. I think it was a horn set, and they ran. They were going to run a pick and pop with Cat, and the Grizzlies switched it, and there wasn't an opening there. So Rudy just went ahead and set a down screen for Conley, or really a flare screen, and Conley flared out beyond the left slot. Towns threw a perfect pass to him, and he knocked down a three. It was like, and I said this Friday, I don't know if this was like drawn up as this is your second option for this play, or if this was just a natural reaction of Conley and Rudy's familiarity. Cat being able to read opposing defenses so much better than he ever has in his career. I think that's very apparent. And just a really, really, like, just a savvy play all the way around by all three of those guys. We're seeing more and more of that. But just overall, the ball movement was so much better in this game for the Wolves. And the ball never really got sticky. You didn't have guys trying to ISO too much. You didn't have Cat committing a bunch of offensive fouls. He only had one turnover in this game in 29 minutes, which was nice to see after he had, I think, 6 in Wednesday's game last week. So this was just a well-rounded, really well-oiled offensive performance, a well-oiled machine-like offensive performance for the Wolves in this game. And everybody got involved. I mean, Minnesota had 7 guys scoring double figures for the Wolves, 7 guys in double figures, which is incredible. And everyone that played scored outside of Ant's first 4 minutes that he played before he left with the injury, and then garbage time. All 9 rotation guys otherwise, or I guess it would be all 8 rotation guys otherwise, scored, and 7 of them were in double figures. Kyle Anderson was the only one that wasn't, and he had 6 rebounds and 5 assists in this game. And he also had 7 points. I know he didn't shoot well, but this was just a well-rounded performance offensively for the Wolves, and really a breath of fresh air to see them be as efficient as they were on that end of the floor. The last takeaway here is rebounding. Minnesota almost doubled up Memphis on the glass, and Memphis is a good rebounding team overall. I know they don't have Steven Adams, but still, like, you've still got Bismack Biyombo. David Roddy's a good rebounder for his size. Jaren Jackson Jr., of course. Jackson only had 2 rebounds in 29 minutes in this game. The Wolves did an awesome job checking him, getting a body on him, getting into his body, just being active again. And like, Memphis was horrible on the glass. 28 rebounds for the Memphis Grizzlies in this game, 54 for Minnesota, nearly double. That's a 26 rebound advantage for the Wolves. And in a game that, it ended up not being close, but that is how a team like Memphis can hang with a team like Minnesota, especially with the Wolves' occasional lapses, which is putting it kindly, on the defensive glass. That was one of the ways Memphis was going to be able to hang around, and thankfully they didn't. And the Wolves really dominated the glass in this one. All right, so another business-like performance. The Spurs game was a bit more touch and go on Wednesday, but a couple, those 2 added games to the schedule, the Wolves performed well, and the schedule gets much tougher upcoming. We'll talk more about that here later in the week. The Wolves do have the Pelicans on Monday night. We'll break that down a little bit later in the show. Before we get to that preview, though, I do want to talk about a projected win total for the end of the season for the Wolves. I made a prediction last week, and I want to, it wasn't on this show, it was on Minnesota Basketball Party. So I want to mention that, and then I want to get into the Bleacher Report prediction and read a bit of what they wrote about the Wolves as well. So we'll do all that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our title sponsors over at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. They're the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch your winnings roll in. With the basketball season well underway now, you can pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League, a league created specifically for combo projections that includes 2 or more players for different sports or leagues. For example, tonight you could take Karl-Anthony Towns 3-pointers plus Christian Watson's not going to play. Romeo Dobbs receptions. So Romeo Dobbs receptions plus Karl-Anthony Towns 3-pointers made, 10.5 combo or whatever that is. Pick more than or less than whatever that number is, and you can win big. It's a ton of fun to cross sports. Monday night's a fun time to do it. There's actually 2 football games to pick from tonight. Head on over to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use the code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. That's prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA, code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right. On Wednesday's Minnesota basketball party, if you're not familiar, you can find the audio from Minnesota basketball party on this feed. It's myself. It's typically Sam Ekstrom is the host with Reggie Wilson, the anchor, sports anchor at KARE 11, Ron Johnson for the Ron Johnson Show, and then Jack Borman, the editor-in-chief over at Canis. This last week, we were a bit shorthanded, so only a couple of us on the show. But it's typically all of us who do a roundtable on all things Wolves, so we'll do that again this Wednesday. You can catch the video over at Locked On Sports Minnesota on YouTube. On Wednesday, early in the morning, and then, or really mid-morning, I guess, is when it typically goes live. And then we'll have the audio here on this audio feed, usually mid-afternoon Wednesday. You can check that out. So if you're not following and subscribed to Locked On Sports Minnesota on YouTube, please do. But we talked about an end-of-season win total projection on the show this week. And I gave a prediction of 57 wins. This was, of course, before the Spurs win, before the Grizzlies win Friday. Not that those were surprises in any way, but my prediction was 57 wins. They're playing right now based on their current pace at like a 62 or 63 win pace, something crazy. Now, the Wolves have only played one back-to-back to this point, which is crazy. They had actually a really tough schedule over the first month to 6 weeks. Now, the past couple of weeks have been a lot easier, so their overall strength of schedule is much more closer to league average. I'm going to see if I can find it real quick. It's actually, according to Basketball Reference, still 4th, but it's been easier lately. So the schedule gets tougher, especially in terms of rest and travel. And so I was factoring that into my prediction. I put them at 57 wins. Now, you also have to consider how well they played without Jaden McDaniels. Now, how well they played without Anthony Edwards. They've won every game that Ant either missed or left early. They're 2-0 in games he missed completely. They won the Thunder game in which he got hurt. They won this game Friday against Memphis when he got hurt. So they played well with guys missing, which is important too. So I said 57 wins. Bleacher Report, Dan Favali has an article where he predicts every team's win-loss prediction or win-loss total for the end of the season. And he has the Wolves. He's got the Wolves at 58, which is interesting. He's got Denver at 54. But then in the Wolves section, Dan says, what does he say? He says, if forced to choose a team to come out of the Western Conference right now, I'm sticking with the Denver Nuggets. After that, the field is supposed to be more open-ended. The Minnesota Timberwolves are ensuring it's not. So he picks the Wolves to finish the best record in the West, 4 games better than Denver. But he also acknowledges that, like, if he's picking who goes to the finals, he would pick Denver over the Wolves, is basically what he says. Not basically, that's what he says here. Also what he says about, I'm just going to read what he says about Minnesota. He says, this team is the real deal. Rudy Gobert should be the defensive player of the year favorite. He's covering exponentially more ground than last season. And you can tell he enjoys hustling alongside players with perimeter juice. Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and maybe Troy Brown Jr. all would have qualified as Gobert's best defensive running mate during his final season in Utah. Side note here. I said this a bunch over the summer. That for people, actually I said this a bunch last year and then ended up not being 100% right because the Wolves defense, it was good. It was top 10, right? But part of my take for why this could work for the Wolves is, yes, Denver had a good defense, but the Wolves could have a great defense. And again, it was good, not great last year because Utah's, the Jazz approach with Gobert was simply, well, we know we'll have a top 10 defense. Let's get a bunch of guys that aren't good defensively and try and figure it out on the offensive end, because then we'll have if we can have a top 10 unit for both, which of course, by the way, Rudy's last full year in Utah or last season in Utah, they did have the number 1 offensive rating in the West in the regular season. And they still lost in the playoffs right away because of the way that their team was structured, because they didn't have actual perimeter defenders that could defend when teams tried to spread the floor. and make Rudy, pull Rudy away from the paint. That's less of a concern now with this Wolves team because you have guys that can guard one-on-one and you have enough guys that are switchable on the perimeter if they need to be. And it allows Rudy to kind of play that center field, that free safety type role on the roaming the back line. This is 100% true. Like what? Royce O'Neal was the best perimeter defender that other than, Mike Conley, late stage Mike Conley, who had a bit of late in his Utah career, he struggled defensively and he looks better now than he did then. But I don't know, mid-30s Mike Conley and Royce O'Neal were the best defenders on the perimeter for those Utah teams. And McDaniels, Alexander Walker, and Edwards are absolutely better than anybody. And I would say Troy Brown Jr. is probably better than Royce O'Neal too, defensively. So anyway, then he says pretty much everyone is busting their butt on the less glamorous and including Karl-Anthony Towns, who remains slow-footed in space, but is less likely to get caught off balance or out of position away from the ball. It helps that he gets to play beside Gobert and Naz Reid, who's made yet another jump at both ends, meaning Naz. He says some offensive awkwardness endures. The Wolves are shooting well from three, but not firing away nearly often enough. Side note, I talked about that. I guess it was a week ago now, but maybe a week ago Friday, I spent some time on shot selection and the Wolves needing to shoot more threes. Back to Bleacher Report. He says it's a flaw that could magnify itself in the postseason, particularly when the dual big setup has repressed volume at the rim and contributed to turnovers in tight spaces. Minnesota will take that trade-off given its defensive success. Matchups could prove problematic in the playoffs, but as it stands, their quality of their top 8 or 9 rotation is superseded by no one. I agree with that analysis. The Wolves have outstanding depth. I said it in the offseason. 1 through 9, 1 through 10, even 1 through 11, this team has at least 11 legitimate NBA rotation players, playoff caliber rotation players. I truly mean that. I truly believe that. The playoff thing, that's a topic for another day because, it's what Tim Connolly keeps saying. He said it on a podcast last week, I think, a Star Tribune podcast. He said something to the effect of, hey, this organization hasn't won a playoff series in almost 20 years. So, well, it will be 20 years this spring. So we'll worry about that when we get there, right? We have to get to the playoffs and then we'll worry about winning a series and then we'll worry about winning the next round, right? The whole taking a day at a time cliche. Well, that's true. But I mean, at this point, it's certainly once you get to say January, February, you got to start thinking about how does this work in the playoffs rotation wise? How do we manage both sides of the ball with our multiple center lineups in the playoffs? And I agree with what Dan Favale says over at Bleacher Report about in the playoffs. It could be an issue that you're not shooting enough threes because teams are going to spread you out and shoot more threes and try to play Gobert off the floor in the playoffs. Like I said, I'm less worried about that. Doesn't mean teams won't try it. And if you're giving up a higher volume of 3-point attempts, first of all, it means potentially more offensive rebounds because you're going to get more long rebounds and there's more variance there. And then second of all, you have to shoot more threes yourself in order to keep pace. And the Wolves just haven't shot a ton of threes. Now, we saw last year the Wolves were like a bottom 5 team in terms of 3-point rate, roughly this time of year, and they ended up like 12th or something in the league. They've kind of been middle of the pack for most of the season, but there is precedent for Chris Finch's offense to, as the season goes on, there's more 3-point attempts. Hopefully that's what we see here. And of course you could just call. I think you could be more intentional about it if you need to. And I think Chris Finch and the coaching staff are smart enough to do that, right? So it's not a major concern yet, and we're nitpicking. But this is a middle of the pack at best offense currently that has a ceiling of certainly a top 10 offense, if not higher. But they need to make some tweaks in terms of shot selection, a few less mid-rangers, a few more 3-point attempts, and then I feel like it's not that's going to be beneficial once you get into the playoffs. Now, this team has currently, as we sit here today, if they do win 57 or 58 games, they're going to be one of the top 2 seeds in the West, absolutely. And then, 3-point shooting is one of those things that there's more variance there for a lot of reasons. And you face an 8 seed or a 7 seed that is shooting more threes, you're going to have to keep pace. So a problem for another day, certainly, but pointed out here in this article. The moral of the story, though, is I have the Wolves at 57 wins to finish the season. My preseason prediction was 49. Bleacher Report is saying 58 as of right now through 21 games for the Wolves. So obviously we'll check back on that as we get to the midway point, which of course is well before the All-Star break. When we get to, 41 games played, I'll do, based on the schedule moving forward, here's what I predict the Wolves will finish at win total wise for the end of the season as well. So something we'll come back to for sure. All right, let's close with the Wolves-Pelicans preview. The third time the Wolves have seen the Pels. As of right now, it looks like Zion Williamson is going to play, which we haven't seen Zion play against the Wolves yet this year. So we'll break all that down here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends over at FanDuel. As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers Stay Hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. It's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. I mentioned earlier about Monday Night Football. I mean, there's 2 Monday night games tonight. There is a Wolves game tonight. There's a pretty full slate of NBA action after there were no games Sunday and only the one game in the in-season tournament, the championship on Saturday. So a lot of NBA action, a lot of NFL action. College basketball is getting good. Conference play underway. Lots of good stuff over at FanDuel. So there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options that include spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season, or kick off really the last part of the NFL season and quarter number 2 of the NBA season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. All right, this is the third time that the Timberwolves have taken on the New Orleans Pelicans so far this season. They faced them back in game number 7 of the Wolves season and beat them by 21. That was a game Zion sat out for, I think he might have been sick, and it was a back-to-back for the Pelicans. Ingram had 24, but it took him 25 shots to get there. The Wolves got 23 from Cat efficiently. They got 26 from Ant. They got 17 and 21 from Rudy Gobert the last time they played the Pelicans. Or sorry, that was 2 times ago when they played the Pelicans. That was a relatively easy win against the Zionless Pelicans team. Last time around, that was the one when Karl-Anthony Towns hit the game winner with just a few seconds left. And then Jaden McDaniels shut down Brandon Ingram late in the game. That was the game that Anthony Edwards fouled out in late trying to defend Ingram when he waved off McDaniels, ended up fouling out. McDaniels contests the potential game winner from Ingram, and the Wolves end up winning by a single point. That was, again, though, no Zion Williamson, and the Wolves held on to win. That was game 12 of the season. So, roughly 3 weeks ago, or not quite 2.5. No, it was about 3 weeks ago. In that game, Jonas Valanciunas gave the Wolves a ton of trouble, which was my biggest concern headed into that game. It's exactly what happened. Now, the first game again between the two teams, Valanciunas only had 8 and 6, but game 2, he had 26 and 11 in the matchup. So my keys for this game. I should also mention that New Orleans is playing much better of late. Now, of course, they lost in the semifinal of the in-season tournament. They got crushed by the Lakers. What was the final on that one? 133-89. They got beat by 44 points in that game. Yikes. But before that, they'd won 3 out of 4. They'd beaten the Kings, the Spurs, and the Sixers. So Kings and Sixers, obviously nice wins. Now they'd also lost to the Bulls mixed in there. And you go back a couple of weeks since the last time the Wolves saw them, they ripped off right after the Wolves saw them last. They won 3 in a row. Overall, since then, they've gone 6 and 4. They beat the Kings twice. Actually, no, they beat the Kings 3 times since then. And the Wolves lost to the Kings, right? They beat the Clippers by 10. They beat the Sixers. But they've also lost to the Bulls. They've lost to the Jazz twice. And they just got crushed by the Lakers. So the Pelicans continue to be an absolute, just, what's the word I'm looking for? Volatile, I guess. A completely volatile team. Now, Zion Williamson's availability and the things he said in the media also have been head-scratching. Now, they got CJ McCollum back. Of course, he also hasn't played against the Wolves, which is key to point out. So no McCollum and no Zion Williamson in either of those wins for the Wolves. I actually don't like this matchup for Minnesota. I know they beat them in game 82 last year, and I know that for the most part, the Wolves actually have the perimeter defenders to keep up with McCollum and Ingram at the same time. But Ingram, McCollum, and Williamson together are very difficult, especially with no Jaden McDaniels. And at this stage, probably no Anthony Edwards. As of me recording this, I'm recording this on Sunday. I do not see an injury update on Anthony Edwards. I'm going to try and see if PR has tweeted anything out yet today or posted anything on X. But I'd be surprised if Ant plays. Yeah, they don't have an injury report posted at all here on Sunday. So we will see. I'm going to go ahead and just guess he doesn't play. Give him, that third day off that Wolves don't play Tuesday. Give him at least 4 days off. If Ant doesn't play and McDaniels we know isn't going to play, it's going to be tough to check Ingram, McCollum, and Zion Williamson Karl-Anthony Towns, I think the move is to probably just put him on Zion and hope for the best. Similar to what they've done. Towns has done a good job on Jokic, and obviously they're not the same player, and Zion's more likely to just run you over. Whereas Jokic, you have to try and force him into being a shooter, a scorer. But still, being physical with Zion, it's not necessarily going to work the same way it is with Jokic, but I think that's the best play. Now, Cat can get baited into, trying to draw a charge and getting called for blocking fouls and getting into foul trouble early, but I still think that's the move. I think it's Cat on Zion, and I think it's, putting Nickeil Alexander-Walker on Brandon Ingram, and then Conley just does his best on Conley / Troy Brown on CJ McCollum. And actually, Troy Brown's probably the next line of defense against Ingram. Maybe we see some Josh Minott in this game, like just put him out there, see if his length can bother. I think it's unlikely, but maybe give that a shot. Just because the length is something that you're severely lacking with no McDaniels and Ant, and length is so important when you're playing against somebody as long as Ingram, as powerful and long and athletic and explosive as Zion, and then you add in McCollum's scoring ability, and that makes me pretty nervous. So anyway, let me throw out my keys. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm going to throw out my keys to this one. Number one, we'll start here. Own the glass against this team. New Orleans is obviously they're actually pretty middle of the pack rebound wise. They're 18th in defensive rebound rate, 16th in offensive rebound rate. But a team that's middle of the pack in offensive rebound rate like that provides such a challenge for Minnesota because of their issues that they have on the defensive glass overall. The last time these teams played each other, when it was a 1-point game, Pelicans were a +7 on the glass. The Wolves were a -7. New Orleans had 13 offensive rebounds, and 5 of them were Jonas Valanciunas. So the Wolves got beat up on the glass. It's one of the reasons that this was only a 1-point game. So the Wolves have to do a much better on the glass, much better job on the glass in this game. They have to be physical. And, I'd be surprised if Luka Garza played in this game, but there's another body that's big that could rebound that might just frustrate guys. Like, especially if there's no Ant, why not, push a few of those buttons, pull some of those levers. I know you've beaten them twice, but they haven't played McCollum and they haven't played Zion. So, be open to trying some of these things if you're Chris Finch. That's my take on that. I mentioned this already. Defending Ingram and McCollum shorthanded is a difficult task, a very, very difficult task for Minnesota. It's got to be Troy Brown. It's got to be Nickeil Alexander-Walker. It's got to be Mike Conley. And then beyond that, that's why I mentioned Josh Minott. I doubt it's Wendell Moore Jr. Kyle Anderson will be in the mix to probably try and check Zion to just make his life difficult. I worry about Nas trying to guard him. There aren't any obvious answers. And of course, if McDaniels and Ant were healthy, were on the floor, this becomes not easier, but more palatable, right? But just kind of throwing bodies at them, building a wall, using length, clogging passing lanes, just making life as difficult as possible. And, try and make it, as a team, New Orleans is not very efficient offensively. Their effective field goal percentage is not great. So, try and contest shots, force them into difficult shot attempts as well. My last thing is to just be crisp on offense. And that might seem a little bit broad, but really what I mean by that is do what you did against Memphis Friday. Pass the ball well, make smart decisions. New Orleans actually does turn defenders over, New Orleans defense turns opponent offenses over quite a bit. They're 9th in opponent turnover rate. They turn over opponents nearly 15% of the time, and they've been good at it the last couple of seasons under Willie Green. So they're looking to create turnovers and, and head the other way. They play, I think they're 12th in pace, so they play at a faster pace than Minnesota too. So they're trying to turn you over. And the Wolves have been susceptible to turnovers. They're actually 25th in turnover rate this year. The Wolves are. They turn it over too much. New Orleans likes to turn other teams over. If the Wolves play their game, even shorthanded, this likely will be a close game when it comes down to it. That would be my expectation. But if Minnesota struggles on the glass, that's my number one concern. I think they can do an okay job defensively just because they've been so good all year, even with this challenge in McCollum, Ingram, and Zion. But defensive rebounding and turning the ball over on the offensive side of the floor are the two things that scare me the most in this matchup because of what New Orleans' strengths are and obviously what the Wolves' weaknesses are. So keep an eye on both of those things. After the game, we will have the live postcast over on Locked On Sports Minnesota on YouTube, so go check that out. Again, Locked On Sports Minnesota, subscribe on YouTube to check out Jack Borman, editor-in-chief of Canis Hoopus, will be live with Luke Inman talking Wolves-Pels right afterwards. If you can't watch it, you can catch every bucket from Wolves-Pelicans. Again, tonight at 7 p.m. Central over on SiriusXM on the SXM app. Our friend Alan Horton on the call Just search Minnesota Timberwolves on the SXM app to listen to the broadcast live. And then, of course, we'll have the post-game pod on Tuesday morning. Yours truly will break down the game, key takeaways, studs and duds, the whole thing on Tuesday morning. So be sure to follow and subscribe to this show if you haven't already. A big thank you to those that do make us your first listen every day. Of course, it's free and available everywhere. You can also watch on YouTube. You can listen wherever you like podcasts. You can watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on Roku and Amazon Fire TV. You can also follow at X at Locked On T-Wolves and also at Beecken with 2 B's, 2 E's, C-K-E-N. Of course, the Locked On Wolves podcast is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your local experts on all the biggest stories right here on the Locked On Network. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.